Welcome back. It is so great to be here with all of our listeners. And if you're new to this podcast, I'm Deborah Larson, the founder and the host of Redeeming Her. But for those who've been following us over this last year, you know that we've been in discussions over grief, trauma, loss, and how to navigate in the aftermath of all of that. But today's episode is a real treat. It's about the power that you hold to consider, act, and shape your own experiences, regardless of any limits or constraints. So if you are rebuilding trust after betrayal, if you're questioning things that you once believed about God, and now you're questioning your faith or how to even to connect with Him, or you're standing at the crossroad of a life-changing decision, well, this podcast is for you. Because today you're going to hear about choice, pursuit, and surrender rebuilt what fear almost destroyed. And with that note, I am so pleased to introduce one of my most favorite people in the world. She is married to my second-born son. She's a mother of 6, a businesswoman. She's an outdoors girl. She's a phenomenal cook. She's a whatever you name it, she can do it. But I want to introduce her to you. And Sarah, thank you so much for joining me today.
Okay.
So before we dive deep in the hard parts of this journey, can you just tell our listeners a little bit about you? Like, what are the most valuable things in your life right now? And the second one would be, how would you describe the person you are today?
Oh, that second one's a big one. Definitely the biggest thing in my life is the Lord, 100%. And right behind that is my family, my husband, and then my kids.
Yeah.
Um, that's a huge piece of my journey is just learning to structure that correctly. In our world, because we are flesh, we tend to put that out of order, and that was a huge piece of my journey. And so I think that really speaks to who I am and what my journey has been about. It's been about putting the Lord first, putting my husband second, putting my kids third, and putting the rest of the world behind all of that. Your job, like you said, I'm a business owner. Work has always been very important to me, and learning to structure that correctly has been a big piece of putting me where I am today.
So can you share real quick? I know that my son has a construction business and you work the business end of that side.
Yeah.
However, you just launched something that is really cool because right now our economy is shifting and changing and real estate is really big. But I know
Yeah.
you worked in that industry. So what is it you do right now on top of all those things of priority?
Yeah. So I just started a transaction coordination business, TC. So handle the transaction coordination for real estate agents. I am a licensed realtor in Idaho, but I don't sell real estate. I am an assistant to the agents to help them with their paperwork, to make sure files are compliant, to track timelines, things like that, to really take that piece off their plate so that they can be out helping buyers and sellers and, doing that front runner communication with their clients while I
Cool.
handle that back end stuff. So it lets me work from home, still do something I love. I love to help people and I love real estate. And so, yeah, I'm excited about it. It's been really good.
Yes. So did you hear all those administrative talents that she carries and juggling all the balls of children? Now, I know you have 6 kids, and
Yes.
this will take us back maybe into the origins of how you 2 met and where that all started, because I know that you've just mentioned family is of utmost importance to you.
Mhm.
And it is with my son as well. But when you came together, you had 3 sons, he
Mhm.
had 2 daughters,
Mhm.
and you had the golden child.
Yes, we did.
That's interesting because I think your hearts are both in the same place, and laying that as the foundation, then the progress of the journey of your however many years, is it 16 years you've been married?
15 years.
15 years.
Yes.
And all of that is part of the life's journey, learning to juggle those things, whether we are working women, whether we're stay at home, or we're the grandparents, or first time moms, or dads, or what have you. There's so
Mhm.
much shift in the world that we're all seem to be not just working from home, but juggling so many things at one time. So I
Mhm.
find it's important that the whole message about family first. We do the God, the husband, and that's all good, but how do we integrate that in today?
Right.
That's really the part that's important. But before we go into that part of the journey, I wanted to just address some of the things about when you guys first met.
Okay.
What I do know about your past is you were married, obviously, with 3 kids. You were married to a gentleman, and in that relationship, there was some betrayal that was laced through all of that, and then you became a single mom of 3 sons.
Right.
And now I know that when you married, you probably didn't have this reflection, but where you are now today, have you even gone back to look at what betrayal may have forged in you before you remarried again? Like,
Oh,
did you struggle with
100%.
some of that?
Yeah, no, 100%. So, I mean, you really have to go even back further. So, I did not come to know the Lord until I was 19.
Oh.
And um, my biological parents were married in the Mormon temple, and I'm the youngest of 4. And then they divorced. So they obviously, left the church.
Yeah.
So growing up, we didn't have a presence of the church in any way in our home. Like, we
Mm.
knew there was a God, but we didn't pray, we didn't read the Bible, we didn't do any of those things. And then later in life, I was probably about 17 or 18 when 2 of my older sisters started going to the Pentecostal church.
Oh,
And so that was when God really kind of was dropped in all of our laps, like, um they're First United Pentecostal, which is a very strict church
yeah.
religion. It was very much affected our family in a lot of ways. They did not communicate with us anymore. They didn't come to
Oh,
family gatherings and things like that. So it was like, what's going on? And that really caused, I think, everybody to kind of start looking at God, like, wait, this isn't right, but what do we actually all believe? And so I ended up with my ex-husband, and he was an atheist, like 100%.
wow.
And my oldest sister, who I was the closest with, ended up bringing me to church, and ended up being saved through the Pentecostal church, and I was baptized there. And um I lasted about 6 months.
Wow.
It was not very long, and I ended up leaving, and there was a
Mm,
lot of reasons for that. Partially, when you're with an husband that's an atheist, it's very hard. He was not supportive of what I was doing, but also just in my heart of hearts, like, I felt like this isn't what I'm reading and what I'm they really saved you you saved you. I hate that term in some ways because of my origins. Um, but before you really were ready, like, you didn't really understand, like, with our kids, we're very much like, you need to understand the decisions that you're making. And
yeah.
with that specific church, it was, this is just what you need to do. See, it says these 3 scriptures and this is what you need to do. And
And don't think.
so yeah, and I'm very much a self-thinker, and so as I
Mm,
started actually reading the Bible, I was like, "Wait, like, I don't believe in all this judgment, and I don't believe in all these rules." And, and I would question them,
mhm.
and my sister was very supportive to, answer the questions, but she was also very much believed she'd been in the church for a few years at that point. She very much believed what they taught and the rules that they lived by. And so, in their world, I backslid and
All these
then had
terms.
another child. And at that point, I wasn't married. We had 2 kids before we got married. He did not believe in the institution of marriage, did not want to be married. We ended up getting married, and my relationship continued to grow with the Lord, but it was very personal. I did not have a lot of influence. I didn't have any influence. I mean, I really separated from my sister. We had a really big falling out. Um and so it was just a relationship between me and the Lord and the Holy Spirit and reading the Bible. And even that, like, I really had to do privately because it was not supported by my husband.
Wow.
And so that's how I came to know the Lord. And I just dedicated at one point, like, I'm just going to read the Bible every day, front to back. I'm going to whether it's 5 minutes or an hour, I'm gonna give you time every day. And I did, and I went through the whole Bible and read it and just grew a great relationship and a lot of understanding.
Right.
And, so through that and through my marriage, it was very hard because then once I had a relationship with the Lord, I wanted my husband to have a relationship with the Lord, and I
Mhm.
wanted to live that life
Mhm.
and didn't. He ended up causing, a big rift in our entire family. He had an affair, with my sister, and, so there was a big rift in the family, and
Mm.
so when we divorced to learn forgiveness and grace and those things before I was ever ready to go forward and marry Seth.
Mm.
Um, so absolutely, like that's the long version. I had to look back and really reflect
Yeah.
on that marriage in order to move forward. Yeah.
So you were saying that betrayal started long before you ever met him because of the segregation of your family and the shifting, and I suspect opinions and maybe even some judgments
Mhm,
because there were decades and there might be some different belief systems that literally handcuff us to
mhm,
what somebody interprets on our behalf. And here you are, very independent. You're a woman of critical thinking. You form opinions, you seek out things, and you have a real gift of discernment. And then the spirit of wisdom rests upon you. And I see that in the development, even through over all the years when we first met, which I can't wait to get into.
mhm,
But how do you say this? The flaws in handcuffing people to believe things can literally bring barriers for us to not be open to other people's experiences and how they perceive God and how they walk their life out. Because,
mhm,
as you so stated, the boy's dad was atheist, which really influenced, silenced your voice, is what I'm hearing.
mhm. Right.
And I know that with origins that aren't grounded in at least we all believe the same baseline here, and then we
Mhm.
live because we're all different people. We're not supposed to be clones.
Right.
However, that betrayal goes deep in many facets of your life. And with that, I can only imagine after his betrayal to you in your covenant of marriage that it wouldn't have um, maybe put a little chainmail on a heart and our emotions because now we're smart and we're looking and now we're going to sift through some things a little bit differently. Would you agree?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, our marriage had a lot of problems before he had the affair, like that. It
Sure.
wasn't, I guess in some people that just happens, but for us, we were really struggling and we had gone through, our youngest son, went through a really bad medical issue
Mm,
and, he was hospitalized for quite a while and out of the area. So I was actually out of the area taking care of him. And there was a lot of other stresses in the marriage
yeah.
and just a lot of unhappiness
Yeah.
overall. I struggled a lot with postpartum depression at that point. And so
Wow.
there was a lot of other problems,
Hmm.
and in some ways that really drew me close to the Lord, even though my ex-husband was not supportive of that. At that
Hmm.
point, I did not care that he was not supportive. I knew what I needed and what I wanted, and
Hmm.
in a lot of ways was already like moving forward.
Hmm.
And so when the split did happen, I just jumped even stronger into the Lord. Like, I did not question him or what was happening in my life. I was almost thankful because I was with him for 13 years and I had spent 13 years very unhappy trying to make a family. With my parents being divorced, I was like, I don't want to raise a split family. I had an amazing stepdad that I consider
Yeah.
my dad,
He
and
is amazing.
he is. And but I still just like at that point in my life, I was like, I don't want to have a split family. I'm going to do anything I can to not have a split family. And but at the end I was like, I just want to be happy. Like there has to just
Hmm.
be happiness.
Hmm.
And so yeah, when we split up, um it was a like I say, like, I just, like, really jumped into the Lord, like, I can finally, like, live out loud for you, not just in my heart,
Yeah.
and that was a big, big thing for me, and so,
Yeah.
like you say, it wasn't very much longer, it was only about 6 months later that I met Seth, and
Ah,
and then very quickly after met you, and that's what I'm saying, like, it wasn't a long recovery, even though it was
right.
because I was already processing so many things and the Lord was healing so many things in me, and I was so open to just be healed and to
Mhm.
receive
Mhm.
and to move forward and not be just stuck. Like, a lot of times when we go through hard times, it's easy to just focus on the negative of what you're going through, and I've never been that type of a person anyways. I've always been a
Mhm.
very, very positive, move forward, you know?
Let's talk about when you met Seth, because this is actually
Okay.
very funny. You both have similar values, you have some similar life disruptions and things of that
Yes.
nature, um, but I was really curious because you weren't in a hurry, so
Okay.
what was your first impression when your sister or a friend introduced you to him or said something? And I wanna hear about your first impression about who he was, and then the first thing I heard was, "You gotta meet my mom," and I'm like,
Yeah.
"Oh, that's not a good way to do this, Steph."
Well, because he knew me right away. Yeah, so, no, he was actually well, he was the 2nd person I dated. I very, very briefly dated saw somebody else, but, oddly, the sister that brought me to the Pentecostal church is who introduced me to Seth.
Ah,
And, so we still have a great relationship. We are very much able to say, like, "You have what you believe and I have what we believe. We both love the Lord," and that's really the important pieces. So Seth, he was managing a kiosk in the mall for the company that he
yes.
worked for, and my sister was, at the time, I think, working in the customer service at the mall where we lived, and she called me and she was like, "Hey, are you dating yet?" And I was like, "Not really," and she was like, "Well, I have this guy I really want you to meet." And I'm like, and I literally went, "Is he Pentecostal?"
Of course, of course, 'cause I don't wanna do that again.
Like, I've been down this road, and she was like, "No," and he's this great guy, and whatever. And I'm like, "Fine, what the heck?" And so she was like, "Well, come to the mall right now." And I was like, "Right now?" And she's like, "Yeah, you gotta come right now. He's there." And I didn't know at the time, but he managed multiple stores, so he wasn't always in town. He worked in
Mhm,
the whole North State where we lived,
mhm,
and so, anyways, I showed up at the mall and she meets me there. We walk in, and where his kiosk was, the mall was kind of like a T, and there's a big center court, and his
yeah,
kiosk is basically in the center court, off to the side a little bit. And so I walk in and she's like, "Okay, it's gonna be right there on the right." And, he's the guy in the kiosk. And so I walk around the corner and there's 2 guys in the kiosk, and one of them has his back to me and he's bald. And I literally turned around. Seth loves to tell this story. I literally turned around and walked away, and I was like, "Wendy," that was my sister. I was like, "You didn't tell me he was bald?" And she was like, "I didn't think about it." I was like, "You have to say that."
that's what a friend does.
Seth's side of the story is it was his best friend that was in the kiosk with him that worked with him at the time. And he saw us coming and they all knew Wendy. So his friend Jason was like, "Oh, here they come." And he was like, "Oh, she's really pretty, whatever." And then he goes, "Oh, she just turned around and walked away." So Seth loves to tell that story to embarrass me, but I was at a spot where I had just, gotten out of this relationship with this guy that had a lot of issues, if you will, like
Mhm,
a lot of things that he hadn't resolved within himself. And I was like, I do not want to jump into this relationship with this person in any way, jump into a relationship that has uh what's the word, like insecurities. I
mhm,
was like, I don't want to deal with somebody else's insecurities right now. Like, I need a strong man. Like, that's what I'm after. I did not have that, and I'm a strong personality, and I needed somebody that matched me. And in a lot of men, baldness is a huge insecurity. And
ah,
that was my thought, like, I'm not dealing with your insecurity," which is so terrible too.
No.
But, that was why I did it. And
Mhm.
so anyways, I went over and I met him, and he has an amazing smile, which just
He does.
literally stole my heart. And so we ended up going out front and talked for a little while, and then you called and his dog died. So then he's like trying not to cry, but he's so upset over his dog. And that was obviously super sweet. And so we ended up leaving, and it was midday. There's a bar there at the mall, and
Mhm.
I did not drink. I didn't drink for many years. And but we went into the bar and neither of us drank. And I don't know, we probably met there around 8 or 9, I can't remember, but we closed the bar down and we laugh because we say we literally sit there and had an interview. And
Uh,
we were both very guarded because of the pain that we had been through,
mhm.
and we were both like, honestly, I don't think either of us was really expecting to get into a relationship. I know I wasn't. And so it was like, unless this all just sounds perfect, I'm not doing this. And so we just asked very, very pointed questions that a lot of times I think people wait and just learn about people, and
Or
neither of
hope
us
that you'll
really.
find the answer someday.
Yeah, yeah, and hope that it'll be the right one, and we were both
Right.
like, "I'm not doing that." And so, yeah, it was this huge, like, interview for, like, I don't know, 4, 5, 6 hours, and, obviously just hit it off, and, yeah, we ended up getting married, like, 2 months later. So, it was very
I think
fast.
I remember we flew in because I think we were already living in Texas, and
Yes.
we flew in, and he said, "Mom, what are you doing?" And I don't remember even where we were camping or who we were staying with, and I had my workout clothes on, and he goes, "Mom,
Yes.
I just need you to meet somebody. You have to meet her." I'm like, "Okay,
Yeah.
son. Well, I'm not exactly presentable, you know?" And, of course, he made us come down to the mall.
Yep,
Like
I
the only
remember.
big thing in that little city, you know? And I remember that he kind of prodded the questions. You probably remember it more than I do, but it was like, talk to her about the spirit. And
Yes.
I'm thinking, okay, so now you got to meet my mom, and then we're going to go right into all this diversity of religious beliefs or spiritual beliefs. And I'm thinking, I don't normally do this, son.
Right.
And he goes, I just told her she has to meet you. She has to talk to you about the spirit. And
Mm.
I just went, okay. So my perspective was, we've never talked. How did that affect you? Like, what were you thinking that day? And what was your
Yeah.
takeaway of all that?
Yeah, and he did the same thing to me. He obviously talked about you, and that was a huge thing we talked about that night, just family. And that was kind of a novel concept to me because even though my mom and who I consider my dad, but he's my stepdad, did come to know the Lord more in a deeper manner over those years of my first marriage. They believe in the Holy Spirit a little differently.
Sure.
And so then I did, even at that
Uh-huh.
point, and definitely more
Mhm.
now.
Uh-huh.
But they've came a long ways too. Anyways, yes, he wanted me to meet you. And so that was a novel concept to me that there's this mom that just wants to come talk to me about the Holy Spirit. And I was honestly excited. Like that was a
Ah,
huge check mark in the plus column for him because to know like this is a person that raised her son this way and
uh-huh.
is still that way and is still supported that way. Like I said, like I was just so thirsty for the Lord at that point in my life. And so, yeah, meeting you was honestly, like I say, like a big check mark in the plus column for
Sure. Sure.
him. It wasn't
Glad I could
intimidating. It
help.
was exciting and refreshing
Yeah.
because you're just different than what I had experienced in the past between the Pentecostal church and
Mhm.
my ex-husband um and my mom,
Mm.
because like I say, my relationship with the Lord was never through the church, it was through my own growth with him, and so, while I knew things, there was a lot of things I had never, like, seen or, openly spoken with other people
Mm.
until I met you.
We've talked a lot about your relationships in your previous and then now your present, but there was definitely, even though you had a lot of questions and hunger and pursuit of the things of God, I know that some of that stuff that was rooted, you were working out and working through. I remember you talking about your brother who had certain gifts, and then we were looking at business deals, and I'd be like, we don't do it that way. And I
Mhm.
thought, oh, I don't want to step on her toes, but I'm like, that's like, I tell people that's like driving down the one-way street the wrong way. Like,
Yeah.
we don't go that route. That's not righteous.
Yeah.
This is the path we take. And I felt like I stood out on a plank going, okay, we're going to jump off of this. We're either going to be best friends or we're going to hate each other. But that's what spiritual diversity or differences can literally shift an entire trajectory of where you are
Uh-huh.
and where you're going. What I remember, because I want to really pivot this about you, the woman, Sarah, and I value that you're married to my son, but you have gone through so many transitions and
Mhm.
so much challenges from the blending of the family.
Mhm.
I was thinking, I remember now that a lot of them are all grown. You had a firstborn, he had a firstborn,
Mhm.
and a couple of years ago, I was sitting talking to both of them about being the firstborn. They're like, yeah, you know, the
Mhm.
daughter was like, so when did I lose my place, kind of a
Yeah.
thing. And the son was like, well, I'm in charge and I've always
Yeah.
been in charge, and I think about that aspect of not just you and your husband, but
Mhm.
the children and how that creates all kinds of distractions, chaos, good things and not so good things, and
Mhm.
coming out of a short term of between your first and your second, and then jumping into that in this enormous down pour of diversity and things in the spirit. I really watched you grow through that. And I remember I felt like I was mentoring you for a period of time, and
Oh,
then
yeah.
about 7 years in, I'm like, oh, she's become my teacher.
No way.
Yes, but that hunger and that desire, what I love about this is God doesn't care where you are. He doesn't care where you start, and he doesn't care really what you believe in. Because
Right.
what I have learned about him is he's not the one going in, he's not the preventing God. We want the God to be, oh, save me from this. Do these things so these things don't happen to me. He's the
Right.
redeeming God who says,
Yes.
it's impossible because I've given you choice. I've given you
Yes.
agency to make decisions, and I'm not going to violate that or I wouldn't be a sovereign God.
Yes.
So we're looking for one thing, and he's like, I'm the redeemer. I'm the one that's going to come in and go, oh, it's a little bit off the road here. Let's see how we can get you redirected. And in the midst of that, we have this baggage of unhealed places or
Yeah.
unreconciled questions or relationships. And we pack it up, and then one day you open the door and the whole luggage falls down. You're like, oh, do I really have to look at this today? So just coming from that place, how did you transition with all the diversity in your home? And it was a lot because you guys homeschooled. Didn't you
For a
homeschool right
time.
away? The whole
Not right
time.
away. No.
Okay.
No, not right away. Not
I mean, we
until
got
yeah, but
6
not
kids.
until
I grew up with
Elisha
8.
started school, or just before Elisha started school. Yeah, it was a few years in, that we started homeschooling. But yeah, that was a lot. And, what you said is just so important. Like, God really meets us where we're at, and he just wants you to come to him. That's all he really
Just have the
asks.
conversation. Have
Just
the
have the
conversation.
conversation.
Yeah.
And through all of those challenges, even though, like, I didn't have a young, rooting in the Lord, I had such a strong root in the Lord when I restarted this part of my life,
Mhm.
um, that, I just kept going back to him. And then you, like you say, like, you totally were my spiritual mother, like, just led me to understand and confirm so many things that, like, I thought, like, this is what I'm understanding. Why does nobody read it that way? Like, why do people think that God doesn't heal? I know he heals. He healed me, and things like that. And, why do people think that, he doesn't, like, talk to us or whatever?
Mhm.
And, I was in a lot of ways, just not confident stepping out and saying that because I didn't have anybody else in my life that believed that with me.
Mhm.
And so you, like, gave me that confidence, but then with that really, like, helped guide me on the pieces I didn't fully understand or when I had questions. and were very good at not just, like, giving me answers, but a lot of times, like, directing me how to talk to the Lord and read and find the answers, and, so as Seth and I walked through that blending of family, I was also still very powerfully seeking the Lord, and Seth was it's an amazing thing to go from an atheist husband to one who supports you in your walk with God. And that is such a huge blessing and such a shift in a household. So, you start raising your kids differently and saying things to them about the Lord and how to live your life as the Lord says to live life.
Mhm.
And things shift. And like you say, there was definitely a wait a minute, I'm the oldest, that kind of thing. Even like James, like, wait a minute, I'm the baby, and then there's a new baby. All of that, like, really putting it on to the Lord of like, this is all about just love. This is a blending of families. It's about coming together as a unit. And so we worked really hard and like I said, I came from a split family and I had a stepsister. Um, and I never considered her my stepsister, she was my sister, still is. And so we really tried to instill that in the kids too, like, we're all
Yeah.
adopted into this world in the
Uh-huh.
Lord's eyes, so no different are you. You've been adopted into this family as a whole. It's really how we tackled that,
Yeah.
and it really was a beautiful thing. Homeschool was hard.
Well, you just had so many dynamics and so many moving parts because
Mhm,
my son wasn't exactly healed from all of his PTSD. He wasn't healed
mhm,
from losses he'd experienced. And even though he
mhm.
was grounded in truth, it doesn't mean we're ready to allow our emotions that challenge manhood, to surface. So it's a dichotomy in both you and he. And here you have all these littles that are looking up to you. And I want to applaud you. I think you guys did a great job. I grew up with eight, and then we had two because two died, and five of them were brothers. And it was 10 years before I had a sister. So, it was a large household and a lot of
Yeah,
shifting. And in that place, I know that the enemy's looking for a loophole or just a crack in the wall that he can
mhm,
trigger that unhealed emotion, that unsatisfied or reconciled conversation you started with God, but you never finished. And
mhm,
and so you sit in there, you go, I trust, but what happens when you don't want to trust? Because it feels like it's all violated. And you did that once, and then, you guys had some challenges. I was sharing, I think, with him last night, Seth, my son. It felt like you guys had a machine gun pointed at you with a target on every single thing you did, and it was bap,
mhm,
bap, 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 bap. It just didn't stop. And then trying to generate income to support 6 kids and make sure you could all take
mhm.
care of them and dealing with exes that have totally different ideas and a lot of damage in their person that really created a messy mess. And
Mhm.
I talk to that because we have more divorced people in the world than we've ever had right now, and
Right.
trying to make something work, this ideology, how to become there's a lot of surrender in that. There is a lot
Oh,
of
yeah.
subordination, not in the way of overload, but who does that? Because you had so much happening that when you decided you were going back to work, it
Mhm.
shifted, like your identity shifted, your
Yes.
roles shifted. And he's very supportive, but
Mhm.
he's also a boy. And he's fun. He's funny. He's always the life of the
Yeah.
party. He's always, making jokes, and he's heck a lot of fun. I mean, his oldest
Yeah.
daughter said, I want to marry somebody like my dad because he makes me laugh all the time, you
Right.
know? And that's a significant thing. But you're both strong personalities. And interesting
Mhm.
is my marriage and we're both strong personalities. So you've
Yeah.
got all these things going in the river, and you've got logs, and you've got trees, and you've got fish, and you've got water, and you've got fun, and then you got a block.
Yeah.
And something shifted when you went back to work, and I
Yes.
wanna just talk to the person, the woman. How did
Mhm.
that make you feel to go out and find something you really wanted to do? You've been a house mom, you've been faithful. How did that make you feel for that transition?
At the time of the transition, that was when Seth started homeschooling, and
Mhm,
the girls were struggling in school, and so we started homeschooling them, and then Eli was of age, so he's homeschooled him too, and so the audience understands Seth homeschooled the kids,
mhm,
and then he had a business that he
mhm,
taught, and he taught a couple nights a week and then on weekends.
Mhm,
And so I went to work full time
mhm.
in real estate, not selling real estate, as a like an office management
You
position.
work for one of the largest brokers in the Northern
Yeah, I
Hemisphere
worked for a
of
very large
California.
brokerage. Yeah,
Yes, yes.
and, at first I loved it. Like you said, I'm a very strong personality.
Mhm,
I love admin type work. I love to be a support person. I'm very good at helping people to see their vision come to fruition because there's
mhm.
people that can see things and have ideas, and there's people that can actually like make it happen.
Yeah.
And that's my one of my gifts. And so I loved that. I felt very fulfilled. Like I said in the beginning, you have to have things in order. And when that happened, especially because it was real estate and I was doing a lot of agent coaching and things like that, I was on
Mhm.
call 24/7. I got calls all times, and I had to take them. Part of it because of my personality, like, maybe it wasn't expected, but I'm not the type to let a call go. So, to me, it felt great. I felt super fulfilled, like, here I am, I'm making excellent money, I'm supporting this family of 8, Seth's bringing in money too. I was the main breadwinner at that point.
Mhm.
And in a lot of ways in the beginning, that felt great, and especially because Seth his gift is in teaching, and so he was a fabulous teacher for our kids. I was happy
Mhm.
that they were being homeschooled, they were learning, they were loving it, it was really good for them, so it was really great. And then there came a point where my pride in my work became more important. It really
Mm.
became my priority, and there was a shift in myself, in how I looked at myself and how I looked at Seth, like, who is he not to provide for this family? He's the man of the house. I went from pretty much being at home with the kids, having all the time in the world to study my Bible and, do whatever I wanted. And as far as like walking my path with God, and then all of a
Yeah.
sudden you're working
Uh-huh.
14-hour days and you don't have any time for God, like, he's there and, you might say a prayer at dinner or whatever, but you're not, like, walking as intimately in that relationship, and, definitely felt that shift,
Yeah.
and, like I say, things really got out of order, and that the enemy 100% attacked, like, he took full advantage.
Of course.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
And, we lay this great foundation of all the challenges and the overcoming and the serving one another as husband and wife. And in the same place, there was also some really hard choices because of your being a single mom, because you took the lead and now he's going
Mhm,
to take the lead. This is real life, people. Like, this is how
mhm.
real life comes. And when we've always talked about sharing honesty and rawness in our stories, that we all have that. I don't care
Yeah,
how great you are. We all have those things. And
yes.
what I watched was that space, there's no time for you and he like you had
Mhm.
before. And
Right.
then your thoughts are provoked and not even out of shame or blame, no accusation, because both of
Mhm.
us, right, both parties always participate. And that's where your time and your anchor in the Spirit of God and through the Spirit of truth. If you're not even having that refreshing coming, sometimes we can just bleed out. We can be
Uh-huh,
so exhausted and drained, not for bad things, but for good things. And
uh-huh,
then this space develops and
uh-huh,
and I'll just fast forward. You moved out and got a separate place. He was there. Everything was shifting. Finances were being divided or however you did that. I don't want to speak
uh-huh,
for you, but
uh-huh,
that to me is like the arc of pivot here. Like, where did
uh-huh.
all this shift at one time? Can you just
Yeah.
touch on that for us?
So when I started to have the shift in my attitude, and Seth then starts feeling like he's not a man because as much as he's funny, he's also very much the man of the house.
Yeah.
And so he started like working out, like he was going to the gym like 3 times a week, very, very strict on his diet, having me cook very special foods. So he was doing these other things to try and like make him feel like a man to me, like, see, I am still a man.
Yeah.
and, but none of us recognized that at the time. So even though we weren't aware, we were both like, there was this head coming. And then Jeremy, his brother, died, and that was definitely, like, the blow to us because grief is a very unique and hard thing to deal with,
Mhm.
and we weren't in a beautiful place at that point. We were the marriage that people always looked at and were like, "You guys are so
Yeah.
happy and so in love," and we were, but at that point, we weren't, like, fighting, but we just weren't connected. We were very
Yeah.
much like living 2 lives,
Mhm.
and his brother died, and it was very traumatic. Like you said, he had been through a lot of other trauma in his life. He lost his dad very young. He was in the military, and a lot of that trauma he had not dealt with. And so when his brother died, it just like all resurfaced. And I felt like, well, I'm got to take care of this family and feed it. And so I've got to keep going to work and putting in these long days and just nose to the ground, like we're just going to get it done. And you're just going to like work through your stuff and you're going to get you done and I'm going to get me done. And we're just going to come out the other side. And Seth is, he's a very, like, his, love language is touch. He needs people to just, like, pet him. He needs that affection,
He does.
and he does,
He does.
but with that personality type, I think it would help some people understand, like, how much he needed me in that time, and I
Mhm.
was being the businesswoman, like,
Mhm.
100% the businesswoman, and, um and so we just started like dividing further and further to where we were like, I say, I'm taking care of me and you're taking care of you. And yeah, we ended up separating, living in different households. We actually got divorce papers, sat down together, filled out every single thing on those divorce papers, divided all of our belongings, and sat there like looking at each other like this is what we really want. And we were both like, it's not, but I don't know how to get past this. And I don't remember which one of us like recommended it. I think it was a mutual thing to like go see a counselor. And so we did. We were already living separately. We went and saw a counselor, and it came on recommendation from someone, and it was terrible. It was a bunch of pointing fingers, which I think is probably normal too, right? Like it's all your fault. I'm perfect. and and the counselor said to us, "You guys are." How did he say that? Something like, "You guys are running a three-legged race
Yeah.
and y'all have broken legs." And he's like,
Yes.
"And you expect her to hold you up, and she expects you to hold her up, and you can't even hold yourselves up, and you need to hold
Mhm.
yourselves up." And we left, and he was like, "Let's go sit at the bar and have a drink." And I was like, "Okay." So we did. And both of us in our faith said, I 100% don't believe with what that man just said. I am not supposed to hold myself up. You are supposed to help hold me up, and I am supposed to hold you up.
Mhm.
And we actually took the opposite of his advice to say, because he was saying, you need to fix yourselves before you can ever help fix your marriage.
Mhm.
And we were like, no, we really are supposed to surrender ourselves to our marriage and help each other through this because you have to hold me up and I have to hold you up until and help you get through. And so that's what we decided to do. And it's a very hard thing when you feel like you've been betrayed and your heart is broken and you're dealing with loss and you've got, all these kids, and mind you, like I was in court, I don't even
Oh
know how
my
many
god.
times for my divorce, like, literally right up until my youngest son was 17, and we got divorced when he was 3. We
From
were
your
in court
first husband.
from my first husband.
Yes.
Yes. We were in court the entire time, which is a constant battle, emotionally and on your current marriage. Um, and so, there was a lot of things the enemy attacked at that through that, like, year or so before Jeremy passed away, and we just said, "Are you like, literally, like, are you willing to do it? Like, can you lay down your pain and just love me?" And
Wow.
we both were like, "Okay, we're gonna try."
I
And
might bruise
so
you.
yeah, and, we had a lot of things that had happened where we felt like the other person had done things to us,
Mhm.
and did not have forgiveness or grace or any of those things at that point, and we sold our house and bought an RV and traveled across the United States because we said, "We're either gonna make it or break it, and we're all in, so there's no escaping to work. It is 100% dependence and in each other's face, and you used to love me. Do you still love me enough to sit in a 32-foot RV and go across the country with me?"
24/7, no nowhere to escape.
Nowhere to escape. You just had to face it head on all the time, and that's what we did, and that really started the healing for us,
Mhm.
started the building the trust again, and, the leaning on one another,
Yeah.
and that was
You
the
know,
first real step, which was crazy.
I remember him talking to me about it because at the time that you guys were at odds, he would call me a lot. And I would say to him, "Well, you need to make a choice. Where are you in all this?" And I think when we get so estranged from our life in general,
Mhm,
we get estranged from the things that have anchored us, where we
mhm.
once believed, now we question. Whether we question you or we question God, we're questioning everything because the truth is we haven't
Yes.
grounded our individuality
Right.
anywhere. Our identity has nowhere to be found. We,
Yes.
we we find our identity in what we do, what our trade is, how we
Mhm.
function, what circles we run in. It is so ridiculous that our identity
Yes.
is in who you were created to be and who God intended you and still is working through with you to get there. And
Yes.
it's not wrong and it's not damaging except to the the outcropping of our choices affect our children. The outcropping of
Mhm,
our choices affect everything. And here you all are in this, I call it the year of pursuit.
mhm,
Because I remember him saying, "Mom, I'm gonna sell the house." I think he had to short sale it or something. There was just so much chaos during that time. And he says, "I'm going to go travel for an entire year." And I'm thinking, how are you going to feed everybody? How
mhm,
are you going to do this? And he
mhm.
says, "It doesn't matter. My credit can go to pot. I don't care about anything else. I need to win her heart." And I was like, wow, I I think I would love to have heard that one day, you know? And I'm gonna do this. I'm running after it. I don't care. I'm not gonna get this divorce. I'm not gonna let this happen. I can't make her change anything, but I am gonna pursue this for an entire year. I'm gonna go and learn and feel. And he did this journey with y'all, trying to heal his trauma. At the same time, you
Mhm,
guys are all tagging along, and his trauma wasn't your trauma, but it was
mhm,
affecting everyone. And
mhm.
to be supportive and to be stuck, I mean, we couldn't even do 5 days in the weather storm, it's like, I and you're stuck together for this whole time, and he would give me updates here and there, and I just thought, "Wow, you chose to fight for your family, going back
Mhm,
to the roots that was so much more important. What is the most valuable thing to you? What he
right.
lost was his dad. What he lost was his family. He lost his identity in that and the roles that he anticipated would be there. He
Mhm,
lost his brother who stepped in, and he lost you, and it was, like, so overwhelming to him. But what I heard when I saw the year of pursuit was, "Isn't that like the love of God?" That he said, "I already laid it all down for you. If I
mhm,
can just sequester you long enough that we can have this communication, all this stuff is gonna fall off by the wayside. And by the way, it's my job to redeem you. It's not your
mhm.
job to do it." You know?
Right.
And those are things that can come out of the most fruitful places from the most devastated garden. It's
Yeah.
just fighting for what you love. How did you choose just that? Because I'm sure in your body and in your soul and in your
Mhm.
smart reasoning, you're like, this is ridiculous. Like, when is he going to
Yeah.
get it? I just can hear it because I know him and I know you, but we're a lot
Right.
alike. And so it's like, how do I do this? Like, I want this, but gosh, I would be like,
Mhm.
can I take a weekend? I'll stay at the hotel and you guys go off for a while.
Right. Yeah.
How did you do that long journey? And what did you have to literally lay down? Because your communication with God was already estranged a bit,
Mhm.
right?
Sure.
And how did you re-engage that individually in that small space and then that together?
Right, and that's the big thing is like you say, like I said, I was really separated in a lot of ways from God at that point,
Mhm.
and when Seth and I separated and then decided, like, okay, do we want to try this? We've turned back to God again. And we were like, what are we supposed to be doing here? And
Yeah.
that was a big thing in our conversation was the Lord told us to get married. Like I said, we were married in like 2 months. Like we knew the Lord told us, we had no doubts. And so that was something that we said to one another was like, this was what God wanted. Who are we to give up on that, you know?
Mhm.
And at the same time, like, that means God's gonna fix it. So, we got back into prayer, and Seth got a word from the Lord that he needed to take a year off.
Mhm.
And like you say, I'm trying to keep this family afloat financially, and he's like, I don't even think he was doing his teaching at that point.
Mm-mm. No,
I
you
think he had
closed it
passed
all.
it to his assistant guy because he couldn't do it. And so I went into a lot of prayer and was like, okay, if you're telling him he needs to take a year off, and then we need to sell this house and do this. I need to believe in my husband, and, like, he's believed in me all these times when I when everybody else would have said I was crazy, and so we're gonna do this, and that was what it was all about, and there was many, many times throughout that because we traveled for
Mhm.
about 6 months. He took a year off from work, but we traveled for about 6 months and then landed, where we are now up in Idaho, and, there was many times during that where we would remind ourselves that God put us on this journey. He was going to bring us through the other side of it.
Yeah.
And that he had said, this is your husband and this is your wife.
Yeah.
And it was really just learning to go back to the roots of how to structure your life, how to structure your
Mhm.
family, and how to forgive. And he just gracefully walked us through all of that. And there was many hard days. There was many, many hard days through that. Um, Many times that I would just leave or he would just leave and literally like practically walk circles around the RV because maybe we were camped at a KOA and it's like, where are you going to go? And, I just need 10 minutes, like, leave me alone. Absolutely. But it was just putting it back in God's hands and going back to where we should have never left in the first place.
Mhm.
And then when things would come up, not ignoring them. It didn't matter. Like, this is what we're here for. This is the journey. So when something comes up, we need to talk about it. And if there's
Mhm.
not resolution today, there's going to be resolution.
Mhm.
And so you can't just forget it and sweep it under the rug. Like, we have to deal with it. And through that journey, really understanding like I said, like Seth's love language, I didn't know that until we were at that part in our journey. And I'm
Yeah.
like, how devastating was that for him, for me to be like, not just not want to touch you, but not even want to be with you. And for somebody that's their love language.
Mhm.
And for me, it's like acts of service. So here you have this man that's not providing for me. And I'm like, like you're not giving me what I need either. But you learn those things and then you learn how to love one another and what the other
Mhm.
person's needs. And you have to be able to go to them and tell them, like, this is what I need, flat out, like plain as day. This is what I need. And then even though you are angry and upset and hurt,
Mhm.
give it. And that's the hard part is to really lay down yourself.
Because now you have to open up that heart that you really don't want to feel, and you have to say, "I'm gonna trust this, but I really don't."
Yeah.
I I look at that in a relationship with God because what I did see was the closer that you would go back to your relationship with God, and for you, it's always the shower. And it
Yeah.
was interesting when we were first learning about the things of the Spirit and how to communicate and talk to God. I remember you asking me, but what about this? Is this okay? Should I do it this way? How do you know that you hear Him? And
Right.
I'm like, we're born with this set of gifts that are without repentance. You don't have to choose Jesus. For those of you, I know that's probably going to be a little more combative, but that's a scripture. The gifts are without repentance because He wants to have every avenue of connectivity with us. I mean,
Mhm.
literally, how do you take a God that's like wah, 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 somewhere out there? He doesn't speak English, and here we are reasoning and trying to put all the pieces together. And it's like he just shows up. And I remember you saying, I just go in the shower and then like, oh, this whole thing opens up and now I can see, hear, and feel. So you would always go into the shower to
Mhm.
get your downloads, and I thought it was beautiful because then he walked you through unpacking it because you had set this beautiful garden and you planted in good soil and
Mhm.
he was just developing it. It doesn't mean we don't have thunderstorms or a hurricane or
Mhm.
you had more salt in the whole entirety of your marriage than I have seen in many people's lives. I've experienced most of that in my life as well, but to look back and go, how are you grounding? How are you going to go back? Because when I was facing some of those things, I'm mad at him. I'm like, I'm
Mhm.
having the conversation with the real Deborah because you made me anyway. And it says, as a man thinketh, he already knows what's in your heart. You might as well have the conversation.
Absolutely.
And he handles and he laughs sometimes and says, I love your spiciness. But, he's pursuing us and I'm watching you have to lay down. And he says, if you lay this down, I can take care of this for you. And we're so self reliant. We had all these things in our life that happened, but we're so self reliant because we can't give up that power of control because we're risking trusting again. We're not
Yes.
we're not just trusting with a blanket. We're still risking it. We still have a little guard here. We're still
Mhm.
waiting for that hammer to drop, but I'm gonna believe you're gonna do this, God. And even in that,
Mhm.
he's making this transaction easy for us. And literally, like you said, whether you like it or whether you don't, this is about choice. And what did
Mhm.
we say in the beginning? Choice is your agency to make a decision, to act on it, and to do it the way that you believe it should be done. But when
Mhm.
you lay that down and surrender, and you surrender it to the Father first, then you
Mhm.
can go to your spouse, your friend, your boss, whatever, the grief that's overwhelming you, the situations that are literally impossible. And he's like, I've got this. I've really
Mhm.
got this. Then you find out, I really don't trust him because I really don't know him. And you
Mhm.
imagine if you spent 6 months alone with just God, no work, no people, no nothing. Do you
Mhm.
know how much we would exchange in our conversations? How much
Mhm.
he would teach us and how much it would take us back to origins. I wanted
Mhm.
family. I still want
Mhm.
family. He's saying, that's why I
Right.
made you. I wanted family. I still want family. And it's the character of God that will court you back because he didn't deviate. And that's what I think you guys worked out in your relationship. And it matured you in remarkable ways. Like you didn't just have a misconception on some things. You had a
Mhm.
flat out, I know.
Yeah.
I don't agree. And yet you came together to agree, even if you didn't agree. And I love how God molded both of you in that season and that time.
Yeah.
I want to ask you one question that I want you to share if you could talk to anybody listening, if they've experienced anything, whether it's broken relationships, whether it's a loss of a loved one, whether it's your child grew up and you thought you gave him the right tools and now he's going the left way and he's supposed to be going in the right way. And any of those things, what would you say to them that you experience your hardest step? What would you say to them that no one said to you so that they can get a breakthrough?
Yeah. Um, the hardest step is kind of what you just said, that you have to trust, and you have to trust God. That's like truly like not in a light sense of the word, the word that the world uses today. Like
Mhm,
you have to lay down your life for him. And he says that to us. Lay down your life for me. That's what he's asking us to do. And that doesn't mean it's going to be terrible and it's going to be an awful life. It's going to come out good in the end, but he will heal you and he will walk you through what you're going through, and he will bring your children back to you, and he will do those things, but you have to trust him to do it
mhm,
and be willing to listen to him and take the hard steps sometimes. Growth is never an easy thing, We never people pray for patience. Well, all he's going to do is give you opportunity to be patient. He's not just going to give you patience. And it's the same thing through all of this. Like he doesn't just make it all go away, but he teaches you and grows you into how to have what you're asking for, the happiness in your marriage and things like that. And so that really is the hardest part, like truly trusting God and seeking him and his ways, even when they are not the world's ways.
Well, and then to hear, if I can reiterate this, well, you didn't hear it. God told me to take a year off. And you're
Right.
thinking, you're just lazy. You don't want to do this. I know there's a lot of stuff going on, and I'm not putting those words in your mouth, but some people do
Mhm.
think that, especially if we feel imbalanced in our roles. And
Right.
and yet to believe, because honestly, the first thing I heard was, I should be staying home and working and creating a bounty while you go take your year off, because how are we going to recover after this? Like, you're
Mhm.
literally saying, we're going to just dump everything, put it in the trash, go out, and we're going to figure out how we're going to make money and food and do all those things on the fly. That isn't even rational. And
Right.
culturally, it's foolishness. So
Yes.
when we're not doing the cultural messaging, which is the largest influence in our lives, our
Yes.
our people group, what we do, our ideologies of what wealth is, of what stability is, of what real truth looks like. And
Mhm.
risk can look like death to some people. The last
Yes.
time I risked, even your body is saying, bing, 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 bing. Last time this happened, this is what happened. I'm going to save you. So I'm going to create all this chaos in your body so that you will listen to me, because I am created to make you whole. I need
Yeah.
you to survive this. But we
Right.
look at that and all these moving parts, and it's this quiet place, and I don't care where you find the quiet place, but it's the quiet place that you go in. Often, like when we had children, you went to the bathroom, closed the door, 'cause it's the only time you could be alone, and they're
Yeah.
knocking at the door, or you're in the shower, "Mommy will be out in a minute," and then you sit
Yeah.
down and wait 10 more minutes because God
Yeah.
forbid you take 10 minutes. That's how our life is today. Like, take
Yes.
10 minutes with God, walk around the
Mhm.
block, sit down. Literally this morning, I was listening to some stuff on the spirit, and I want to do some teaching on this, but I want to close with all of this because, what I take away from your journey is trust isn't a feeling that just arrives. It's a
Right.
step you take, it's a choice you make, and the
Yes.
strength will meet you on the bridge. And that's what he
Yes.
did. He met you on the bridge of transition, you not even knowing what that was. And I can honestly say we are an impatient people. We are impatient. We don't believe that God will really deliver. But if you
Mhm.
wait long enough, we forget he's got multiple personalities and choices going on, and he's not manipulating them. So he
Mhm.
walks with you while you're on this bridge and you're kind of like walking on water and you're trying to figure these pieces out. But he says, if any of you lack wisdom, ask me. Ask
Yes.
me. You're never alone. You're never outside your comfort zone. We just find comfort in different places. And that's where
Yes.
the chaos of what I call the horizontal world we live in. You got to be here. You got to do this. I got to be on time. This needs to end at a certain time. I'm going over all the things that we do. When we lay it down, then the voice of the spirit can go, so I'm
Yeah.
listening to this gentleman that I really have learned a lot from over my years of learning how to connect with the spirit. It's good when people mentor us because then we can mentor someone else. And I
Sure.
remember that when trauma happens, when these grave things come against you, Sarah, or anyone else, even to all of our listeners, when the assaults come, you can be strong in the spirit. You can be strong in your faith, but it can suck the life out of the very breath of God that He put in you, because
Mhm.
there's so much that we don't know. And sometimes we just need to breathe, you
Yeah.
know, just breathe. Because otherwise, if we're not strengthening or fueling, let's say I've got 100 gallons in the tank and I've been doing this spiritual walk for 25 or 50 years. I've got this. I can
Mhm.
promise you 2 traumatic blows, you'll be empty that
Yes.
fast. You'll be empty.
Yes.
Not to mention the continual assaults that you and your husband had.
Yes.
It's just remarkable to me. I want to applaud you and thank you because it takes a lot to be vulnerable and honest and to share, "Hey, I wasn't all that," you know? And
Yeah.
it's not because you weren't all that, it's because you recognize your own pride, because you
Yeah.
did say that, "I don't really want to take this risk, God forbid." But
Mhm.
here's the beautiful thing, what you did that was so lucrative for you then is what God brought back around to you now.
Yeah. Absolutely. 100%. It's come full circle, and it took, what are we, almost 7 years now? And, it hasn't been this hard of a journey the whole time by any means, but yes, it has
Right.
definitely came back around. We're able to see the other side and, um, see the full circle, I should say, and God truly is beautiful the way that he works if we just
Yep.
follow him.
And we weren't created or designed to live in the gutter of fear,
No.
if you will. You were given so much authority that you could choose trust, and you can use that as your sword or your saber sword. You know, I think about all the Avengers and things of that nature. But
Yeah.
I want to repeat that redemption isn't your responsibility. It is his nature, actually. It is his nature to redeem the things that we think are lost or stolen or gone. And here we're
Right.
full circle. And the very thing you laid down, he has now equipped you with. The very thing Seth laid down, he has empowered him. And after he obeyed for that whole year, I remember him saying, he said, "Son, are you ready to work? Because I
That's
got
right.
work for you to do." And
That's right.
it wasn't on our timing because we're thinking if I'd been working, we'd have a bounty to come back to, you know?
Right.
And and I can say I would love to have you back on to talk about even the challenges of this last year and how God's fulfilling promises came through in both of your relationships, greater than
Mhm.
what we've talked. We talked about the start, the things that we struggle with, and the resolve, but the greater message is the today. Thank you so much for taking time, Sarah. Thank you for
Yeah.
clearing the dogs out and making room.
I knew they'd be good.
They were so good. So for
Well,
those who
thank
are
you.
listening, you're welcome. For those who are listening, please take time to share with us. We look forward to reading your comments, to interacting with them, and all of your feedback. And if you would like to connect with me and or with Redeeming Her, you can find me on deborahlarson.com. It'll all be in the show notes. But if this has stirred something in you, sit with it. Write some
Mhm.
things. Have a conversation with God. Nice, not nice, eh, maybe deep. You want to go however you want to do it. Just plug yourself back in because sometimes we just need to refuel. I mean, we're real good at doing that in the natural realm. We need to learn how to do it in the spiritual realm. But I want you to ask the Spirit where you have been and where is he inviting you to risk again? Because we're going to go on plateaus and wow, okay, now I get to coast. He's like, no, I want you to do it again. Because
Mhm.
when you do that, you're going to see the fruit of your trust because that is the reward of the heart of God. So until next
Mhm.
time, please like, follow, and share. And hey, share it with somebody who needs to hear it. Thank you so
Yeah.
much, and we'll see you next time.